We are counting down 5 Disney classics, ranked by how dark their original stories truly were. From lethal bargains and enforced silence to bodily mutilation, ritual torture, and horrors so extreme they demand a content warning, these tales were never the bedtime stories you remember. The descent begins at number 5, where a single stolen rose sealed a young woman's fate as a prisoner. In 5th place, Beauty and the Beast begins not with enchantment, but with a debt. In the earliest French versions, a desperate merchant plucks a single rose from a forbidden garden as a gift for his daughter. That simple act triggers a transaction with deadly stakes. The beast emerges not as a misunderstood prince, but as a captor demanding payment, the merchant's life or that of one of his daughters. In Madame de Villeneuve's 1740 version, the bargain is explicit. Beauty must take her father's place, or the beast will kill him. When she arrives, the beast's threat becomes personal. If you do not love me, you shall die. Love here is not an awakening, but a contract enforced by the threat of death. Maria Tatar and Jack Zipes both read this as a reflection of 18th century class structures, where marriage acts as an economic exchange and women's consent is a matter of survival, not choice. Disney's 1991 adaptation softens the coercion, recasting the beast's ultimatum as a magical curse that can only be broken by true love. The original, though, is rooted in moral coercion, a rose for a life, affection in exchange for freedom, setting the stage for a story less about romance and more about captivity dressed up as virtue. Number 4. The Little Mermaid is remembered for its vibrant animation and triumphant ending, but Hans Christian Andersen's 1837 original is a study in self-destruction and silence. The mermaid's wish to join the human world comes at a harrowing cost. She bargains her voice away to the sea witch, not just losing speech but surrendering the very means to express love or pain. In exchange she is given legs, but every step she takes feels as if a sharp knife is stabbing her feet, a metaphor for the agony of self-sacrifice. Unlike the Disney tale, there is no magical loophole or last-minute rescue. The prince never returns her love. When her hope is finally extinguished, the mermaid faces a stark choice: kill the prince and save herself, or accept oblivion. She refuses violence, dissolving instead into sea foam. Andersen's ending offers no wedding, no restoration of voice, only a transformation into a daughter of the air, her body gone, her longing unresolved. Maria Tatar and other scholars read this as a parable about the silencing of female desire and the price of unreciprocated love. Where Disney grants closure and agency, the original leaves only pain and erasure, a cautionary tale about the cost of longing in a world that does not answer back. Number 3. Cinderella's path to the palace is paved not just with hardship, but with blood. In Charles Perrault's 1697 French version, the story leans on gentle magic and a forgiving tone, with glass slippers, a fairy godmother, and a rise from ashes to royalty. But in the Brothers Grimm story Aschenputtel, first published in 1812, the price of social mobility is far more brutal. When the prince arrives with a lost slipper, the stepsisters do not simply fail to fit. They mutilate themselves to force the illusion. As the text reads, and they cut off their toes so that they might fit into the shoe. The deception is short-lived. On the way to the palace, birds perched in the hazel tree sing out the truth, exposing the blood seeping from the shoe. The punishment is swift and final. At Cinderella's wedding, the same birds descend and peck the eyes from them, leaving both stepsisters blind. Maria Tatar calls this a grim lesson in bodily conformity, a warning that the pursuit of status can demand self-destruction. Jack Zipes reads the bird's vengeance as nature's corrective, a moral order enforced not by kings, but by creatures who see through every lie. Disney's 1950 film transforms this horror into slapstick. The stepsisters wriggle and squabble, but no knife is drawn, and no eye is lost. The glass slipper becomes a symbol of hope, not a test of flesh. Yet in the original, the cost of ambition is measured in blood and blindness, a reminder that fairy tales once taught survival through fear, not fantasy. Number 2. Snow White is remembered for its singing dwarfs and a gentle sleeping princess. But the original grim tale is a study in relentless violence and ritual punishment. In the 1812 version, the queen's envy is not just petty, it is homicidal. Her first command to the huntsman is chilling. Bring me her lungs and her liver. These organs are to be proof of the girl's death, intended for the queen's own consumption. A gesture that fuses maternal jealousy with cannibalistic overtones. The huntsman, unable to carry out the order, substitutes animal organs, but the queen's pursuit only escalates. 3 times she attempts murder, first with a poisoned bodice, then a toxic hair comb, and finally the infamous apple, each attack crafted to ensure Snow White's death, not escape. The result is not a magical nap, but a state described as death itself. Only after being placed in a glass coffin does the illusion of sleep enter the narrative, a device later adopted by Disney to soften the blow. Yet the story's darkest moment comes not in the violence against Snow White, but in the queen's fate. At the wedding, she is forced into red-hot iron shoes and made to dance until she collapses, flesh burned to the bone. This is not mere retribution, but a public spectacle of torture, echoing medieval punishments designed to warn and terrify. Scholars like Marietta Tarr and Jack Sipes read these scenes as reflections of a culture obsessed with bodily integrity and the spectacle of justice. Disney's adaptation, bound by the Hays Code, transforms murder into banishment and death into sleep, erasing both the threat of cannibalism and the horror of judicial torture. What remains on screen is a sanitized struggle between good and evil, but the original tale is a brutal lesson in the consequences of envy, a lesson delivered not through song, but through blood and fire. And finally, in first place, Sleeping Beauty's original form is not a tale for children. Before the world knew her as Aurora, she appeared in Giambattista Basile's 1634 story, Sun, Moon, and Thalia. Here the prince does not wake the princess with a kiss. Instead, he finds Thalia unconscious and, mistaking her silence for consent, rapes her as she lies motionless. While she remains in that deep sleep, Thalia gives birth to twins, Sun and Moon. The horror deepens. The king's wife, upon discovering the existence of the children, plots to have the twins killed, cooked, and served to their father in a grotesque feast. Only at the last moment is the cannibalistic plan exposed and stopped. These details are not embellishments or later inventions. Basile's text is explicit. He lay with her in the dark, for he thought that the deep sleep was a sign of consent. Scholars like Marietta Tarr and Jack Sipes point to these scenes as more than shock value. They are windows into a world where women's bodies were treated as property, and violence was a tool of both desire and control. The original Sleeping Beauty is not merely asleep. She is denied agency at every stage, her fate decided by the appetites of others. Disney's film from 1959 erases all trace of this darkness. The curse becomes a harmless spindle prick, and the prince's kiss is recast as an act of pure love. The birth of the twins, the sexual violence, and the threat of cannibalism vanish, replaced by pastel colors and a happy ending. The transformation is total. A story of violation and survival becomes a dream of rescue and romance. For modern viewers, the sanitized version is familiar, but the original remains a stark reminder. Fairy tales were once warnings, not wishes. Viewer discretion is always advised when confronting the roots of Sleeping Beauty, where the line between enchantment and horror is drawn in indelible ink. Across all 5 stories, one chilling pattern emerges. What we celebrate as innocent escape was born from warnings about cruelty, violence, and fear. Disney's sheen cannot erase those roots. These tales remind us, beneath every fairy tale ending, darkness waits. Even our brightest fantasies cast the longest shadows.